Zoom got mad at me for using too much space, so should probably take care of that too. All the replays from last night are up. All right. Interesting. It says Mike Lang Live is the title. So we'll have to work on that. But we're live. And we have like a minute so we can continue our green room conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I do like that the Canvas thing is just, it's kind of irritating to me now, just because I see Canvas as an ecosystem that you have to understand how that works together. And it's a here's my unit, let me put my unit in there, let my learners go at a pace that they are comfortable. Not let's pop stuff in there every day and stuff. Like, if that's what I wanted to do, then Google Classroom's a lot better, more efficient, a lot easier to use tool if you had that available for you to do that, or Seesaw or Shobi, something where it kind of encourages that kind of teaching. But if you're talking about dynamic online teaching, then you kind of have to have that philosophy when you use Canvas, in my opinion.
This goes back to the conversation we keep having. Are you going to take what we've been doing and shove it into the distance learning box? Or are you going to fundamentally rethink the approach because you have this new, no pun intended, canvas to work with?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a learning management system. So it's kind of like a breadcrumb trail for you to discover. So that's how I would approach it. Thinking back at the graphics that you showed me, my instinct for myself would say every single one of those pop-ups is a separate part. That makes it more digestible for me. The thing I was talking about yesterday, when you're trying to make presentations for remote learning now, is that if you prepared for an hour presentation, you have to bring it down to 30 minutes. So you're going to have to go over your slides so much quicker, almost chop it in half to keep attention, because there's so many things around us that we can be distracted with on our screen alone, not just happening around us and the situation that you're in as a learner. So same with this, I think if you can focus more on one thing and then lead them down the path and then get that same structure, then I think for new kids that will be easier to understand. Once they've gone through one or two of them, they'll know, okay, this is going to come next. This is the welcome word. There's a little bubbly introduction video if you want to, and then the assignments come. But yeah.
See, but I think like when you're talking K5 though, Kurt,
mm-hmm.
You gotta say,
really hard.
Keep your crap to 7 minutes, fam, or less. Like
Yeah.
Keep it to and don't. Some of the templates I've seen are text heavy, and you're like, nah, look, it ain't. I'm not as an adult. I'm not paying any attention to anything that's so text heavy and dense.
No.
I'm like, oh my god, this is a problem. So
no, I'm talking professional learning. Even for us, the rule that I learned is that the bigger the screen, the smaller the text. So the smaller the screen, the bigger the text. That still applies. And if you can do it with icons, because you've got a lot of students who are English as a second language, then they will benefit from that.
Go back to what you said a minute ago. And for those just tuning in, we're just in the middle of a random conversation. We will do official intros in just a second. You said the bigger the screen, the smaller the text. The smaller the screen, the bigger the text.
Yeah, meaning that if you're watching it on a monitor, anything that's big, then you can go a little bit smaller on your text. You can put a little bit more of text on it, because it's kind of like it's between a book and a presentation. So part of your presenter notes could go onto your slide when you know that your students are, let's say, one-to-one laptops. You could do that. If you're one-to-one small screen, iPad, Chromebook, then you bring that text down a little. You bring the amount of words down, the font size up, So you need to summarize a little bit better. And if you know that your kids are following along on a really small device, like a phone, then I try to go to capitals almost and icons, because you want to be able to tell the stories. And with what Mike just said, keep that short, 7 minutes tops, preferably somewhere between 30 seconds and 3 minutes. That YouTube mentality, it's almost as if, as a teacher these days, I am those commercials you get at YouTube. And I need to say, hey, remember me? It's time to learn, something like that. Because there's so much to do in a day. And I've seen parents write very almost hurting in my heart responses of kids who are struggling with an enormous amounts of stress of trying to keep up, where they have to look at everything, then get homework done, parents who don't know how to help, not being able to jump in. And I know teachers are doing a wonderful job. We are learning as we go, trying to chunk it up a little bit. We can't be in front of that monitor 8 hours a day. I can't even do it as an adult.
Oh, facts.
That was something that came up yesterday. I forget who we were talking to about, like, the expectation that you're going to sit in front of a monitor all day, even as an adult, is outrageous. Trying to get a child to sit in front of a monitor all day is ridiculous. And the guidelines, the schedule for Clark County just came out, and it's exactly that. We take the sitting in the classroom all day and we wedge it into this, this virtual model where you're just expecting a kid to sit in front of a computer screen. Like, we know that's not healthy. Like, what? Why? Who thought that was a good idea? Like, I just don't understand. Two things. One, it kind of reminds me a little bit of at the very beginning when things went remote, how late night shows really struggled with adapting their format to YouTube, and how it pointed out that YouTube content creators have a very different process and are working with different tools. And it's almost like a lot of the late night shows didn't know how to adapt to that that new kind of world of, you can't do a 40-minute show. You have to take each of your segments and chunk it into separate videos. Even little things like getting their audio so that it wasn't atrocious, or making sure that their set wasn't distracting because they were trying to do a set from their house. I feel like this is a similar thing where you have this really old school mentality, no pun intended. You're trying to like cram it into something that just doesn't, those two things just don't go together.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, I've been observing some kids nowadays, and what's been happening is a lot of parents said they just run to the refrigerator every single moment to get a snack. So if I could do that for learning, and for me, a lot of things relate to food for some reason. I don't know, must be cultural. But if I'm thinking about food, if I could choose to have something every hour throughout the day, or I have to eat a big meal in the morning and that's it for the day, I would rather go for a little bit, because I'll eat till I'm full or over, and I'll feel sick. And I think we're getting at that feeling sick of blasting information at learners all day long, and then hoping that they do something with it.
That's very interesting. So I just took a course, all right, KQED, 6-week course. All right, I didn't do any work until a couple days ago. None of it. I was like, it's asynchronous. I can do this when I feel like it. Mm-hmm. All the coursework is due by the 31st by the night. I got all the coursework done the last 3 days. For 6-week course, I got it done in 3 days. So there are going to be students who are like me that say, cool, just tell me where I need to go, fam. I don't need you. Just record the videos, get everything done. Let me go at the pace that I want. What you're trying to do now is say everyone is the same. Like, again, they're going to be the Kurtz of the world that wants the small pieces, and I'll go and get them when I get it. It's going to be me that I want the smorgasbord at the end. I just want to go and take it. I know what I need to deal with. I'm going to sit at the table and just chew and chew and chew and chew and chew and chew and chew. I'll get it done. Leave me alone. The work is done. God bless you. But the way that we're doing it in our district is we're essentially making every learner the same learner. And that's I guess I've been frustrated my entire life having to be forced to go to school in the I'm not a morning person, right? I am a night owl type person. So I had to denature myself to go to school.
Yeah.
All right. I went to high school. My high school, I'd be at high school like 6 in the morning, 6:30. Like, look, I'm not functioning then, fam. That's not how I work. I went to sleep at 3 this morning. All right. So 3 this morning, I had to get up. I mean, I love doing this kind of stuff, but generally I'd be sleeping till 11:30 probably. I'd get up, I drink my coffee, I slosh around for an hour or two, and then I'd get in and start getting my work done. So how many of those kids, especially high schoolers, seeing that I've been off since March, not being physically in the classroom, I've become myself. So now you're telling me, nope, you can't do that anymore, even though for 6 months you've been you. Now we're gonna get up, sit in front of a computer screen for 30 minutes while someone bores you virtually and tells you some stuff I don't care about, when you could have done that in a 2.5-minute video, which I could have, or send me a YouTube link that would have explained it out far better than you would have done. Let me do what I need to do and handle my business. You are now forcing me into this factory model again when I was free for 6 months.
Yeah. By the way, we have a comment on Facebook. First of all, Jenny says good morning.
What's up, Jenny?
And second, your mom says that she totally agrees with you. She wants to learn at her own pace. She'll get it done when she gets it done.
Facts. I got things to do. I got coffee to drink. All right, first of all,
and I agree with that. What I was trying to say is that I'd like to get small chunks instead of everything at once. And in those small chunks, I need forecasting. Saying this is what I need you to do by the end, and then give me time to do it. Instead of someone talking to me for an hour, and then let's say it's a chemistry lesson for an hour, then I go to a math lesson for an hour, then I go to English for an hour, and they all want me to do projects and homework. And if something really interesting happened in that first lesson and something caught my attention, for myself, I won't be able to follow the other ones because I'll be like, oh, I need to go design something, or I want to make a video about that, or I want to learn more about that. So I totally agree what you say in the give it to me up front and in small chunks. That's what I would love for myself personally. Is give me 10 videos that I can watch along the way that I need it and when I need it, and set a due date for a project. If it's the end of the week.
Tell me what the goal is first, right? Tell me what I have to do. And then I have
first,
this is what I want you to do. Cool. All right, good. It's due in 6 weeks. Cool. I know what I got to do. I know when it's due. Now I can fart around. I can watch different YouTube videos. I can talk to Kurt about perhaps, other strategies that my teacher doesn't know about that I can, what I'm saying? You give me my freedom to create then, because you've given me my limits. You've told me what I have to build, and you told me when I have to build it, but you also give me freedom within the bottle, right? I can go and do this or make a podcast or whatever. This is going to be a dope conversation. So let's introduce everything first, and then we'll get down to
We're 15 minutes in, and we've done no introductions. We're getting right into it today.
Indeed.
That's how we do it.
Again, this is one of our favorite people already. Not to say everybody's not our favorite people. Kurt always, we had these very interesting conversations. So this is Kurt Kleinen, Designer Supreme. We're here this morning at Vegas time. It's 8:15. East Coast time is what, 11:15?
Correct.
11:15.
Yeah. So we're here just to go to talk about design, and this is kind of a huge topic right now because everyone's going hybrid or distance, etc. Even if you're not a teacher, you're a parent of a student, a grandparent of a student, whatnot, it's going to have to experience this stuff, and you're going to unfortunately have to co-teach with the individuals in the classroom. Kind of interesting to know about this. And I think this also opens a question we can kind of explore as well about, again, that simplifying your design so that the non-educator also has access to those lessons, because that's going to also be important given that grandparent, daycare worker, friend is going to have to walk students through this stuff as well, since mom, dad, sister, brother, cousin, whoever might be at work. So we're going to kind of talk design for the next hour. As always, Mike Lang, the homie Webs, we are like the Webs media mogul empire thing is like really popping off today. So we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, We're on Twitch. We're everywhere. It's kind of interesting, but it is what it is. Webbs, go ahead and kick us off, man.
Yeah, no. So Kurt, well, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. We kind of started. That's maybe good because that summarizes a little bit of who I am. I am a down and dirty kind of guy, meaning I like to be very practical. I'm not the do a lot of study. I need to see it and take it apart. That's my approach. And that's why I like to keep things very simple when I design. I do like to collaborate with people who have a lot of knowledge, and I strongly believe in that community and people who can help me and point out. So I do believe in the synergy, but I am more of a practical kind of guy. I come originally from Belgium. I started out as a PE teacher, then I did elementary, all my grades over there, worked in special ed, kindergarten. Then for the Department of Education, I worked at a training center. Then I started a nonprofit to help teachers out using technology in education. And then about 2 years ago, we moved to the US together with my wife, and then ended up in Philadelphia. Now I'm designing learning experiences in books or also in virtual ways these days, and been happy that you guys been part of one of those already. So, and then these, like the Be Bored, Be Creative series, that was fun. And now this one.
Oh, that's so awesome. I was saying yesterday, when we started the Be Bored, Be Creative series, if I had known where it would go, yeah, I just didn't see that coming. But it's been fun, and we love having these conversations. And so we were talking about right now, a lot of teachers, particularly here in Clark County, are trying to get familiar with how to use Canvas and how to design lessons for the online environment. And you've adapted that in a really interesting way. Oh, okay. You've adapted that in a really interesting way. Do you want to talk a little bit about the ADE playground?
Oh yeah, sure. And jump in at any time. I wanted to see what could we do from the physical playground, where just for people who don't know what a playground is, at ISTE, which is normally a physical big conference, you come to these islands where there's different activities happening. So I wanted to simulate that in a virtual way to see what we could do, where there's still choice. If I go to a table and I feel like this is not my jam, I can't learn this way, it's not related to my curriculum, I have the liberty and the freedom to walk away. But if I really love it, I could stay at one table for the whole event. And that's what we kind of simulated. And I thought of, people are going to come, what do we have in common? A space, maybe, how can we tie that to learning, things that we have at home? So the theme became kitchen playground. Also because our late and dear friend, Jeffrey Powell, who started with a big dream about bringing mobile learning conference to the world, I wanted to contribute to that dream and say, I want to try this playground out. And I know Jeffrey loved food, so kitchen playground was kind of an obvious one over there. So I said, okay, I'll do it only if you help me coordinate. And he had got to be part of it in some kind of way. And as a tribute, we could do that. So we started that with an old school tool that brought us back to the 80s a little bit, called WebEx Training, not WebEx, the regular one, and not Zoom, the breakout rooms, because WebEx Training gave us the freedom to move from room to room. And all activities were kind of timed in a 15-minute slot, I would say. So if you wanted to follow along and very, if you're the person who goes from 1 to 10 step by step and doesn't skip, then you could do that. But if you're the one who says, I'm going to start at 9 because everyone's at 1, that's perfect too. So that freedom was very important for me. and then having people who can relate that to content. So the creative approach, where what Mike was, I think, saying in the beginning already, that I want the freedom to express myself in my way of learning. So we focused on that: drawing, photography, music, video, augmented reality, and coding bit that tied into some other curriculum, and which I think would be nice if we would get projects now that say, hey, the end result is one of these. If you want to code an app about what you learned, great. If that's your jam and you can go into it, even better. What I think is another big value of that, relating to what I've seen now in the US and learning about racial injustice, equity, I think then you actually give kids the opportunity to highlight where they're coming from, and showing, look, this is what I made. And in a classroom, you might have had the opportunity to let 2 kids talk about their project, and now everyone gets to share it out. And make that a celebration, that share, and be proud of where you're coming from and what you've achieved. So I think there's tons of opportunities if you design that in a good way. And this is not the graphic design that we're talking about. This is more the design for learning. There is a little, I wouldn't call it a trick, but something that I always think of. As specifically as teachers, I feel we're collectors. I wouldn't say hoarders. I know I've been accused of that sometimes. I had an attic in Belgium that was kind of a mini library, but something like that. So always on a playground, if it's physical or virtual, I try to build in something that makes you at least go and have a look at each of the tables. So this time, it was a template with a refrigerator, and refrigerators have magnets on it. We love the stickers that go on the back of our computers. So that made me think of, what can I do for someone who's a collector and who does that? As you can see, I am kind of guilty of that, collecting a few things. So it's a lot of personality in that. So that's a bit about that playground. I want to know about your experience on it, because you've been specifically, Webs, on the backside and helping that out on it.
Yeah, well, and I think you hit on something really interesting, and I know something that Mike has feelings about. When it comes to educational experiences, students of color in particular often are forced into the back to basics approach. Nope, you can't do anything creative until you've mastered reading, until you've mastered all the math, you've mastered all these basic topics and skills. When often the tools and strategies in something like a playground or in a design thinking approach, problem solving approach, by using those, it opens up the opportunity to express yourself, like you said. It opens up the opportunity to use accessibility supports, like we talked about with Valerie yesterday, so that those students can express themselves and can more fully participate in whatever is happening.
Yeah, totally agree on that.
So to your point, one of the structures we're building into our virtual space is essentially a playground every week, where kids on Monday will get a challenge. This is what you need to do. And then the specialists, we will go and give you that playground, but you can jump into the music room, you jump in the PE room, jump into the technology room, jump into the science room. Great. We're going to give you different pieces. If you want to do it this way, you can do it this way. You want to do it this way. And I think, again, making things relevant to a student creates nascency, creates this desire. It creates me wanting to read about it, because now I care about it. But if I don't care anything about what you're talking about, that's where we have this pulling of teeth, and you have to do this. And then we have this power struggle again, where I am teacher, you will do what I tell you to do, rather than let me make this so attractive to you that you cannot deny wanting to do it. And then you do it on your own. And I think that's where I was really impressed with the concept of the playground, in that it wasn't a marriage, right? It was this date. And if I didn't like the date, I could peace out. Be like, this sucks. Let me go somewhere else, right? I'm not good.
Yeah.
Now,
and
no
I'm not
offense.
offended as a teacher by it.
Yeah.
Like, if you say this conversation's not mine, I won't be offended by it. Like, it's for you to try it out.
but that's the thing that I think that a lot of us as educators get offended by that. If a kid opts out, it's like, oh my God, like
put all my time and effort in it.
You know what I'm saying? I spent 3 hours building this lesson. Why did you not like it? And so you take offense, and then there's angst.
Brings it back to the first rule of presentation. And about anything that you create, who's your audience? Are you creating something for yourself or for those little guys?
Speak a little bit more about that, because I think that is going to be like one of the challenges of this distance learning scenario is this is how I like it. This is what it looks like. This is how you will learn, rather than let me learn about my kids.
Yeah, I think that the showing up and talking, it's simple things. Yeah, Pedro Lobo was, he's an educator from Brazil who was on the playground, translated the whole thing into Portuguese, asked me to come to his playground. And I said, okay, I'll only come if you teach me Portuguese so I can open the playground in your native language. And I think that first rule of respect, of seeing you as a human being and saying, I respect you and I want to fully understand your culture. And this is my first step of showing that way. I mean, great that you want to do all of that, but I want to be able to say just a few words in your native language. And that makes a huge difference. I've worked with educators. I've been lucky to work with educators all over the world. In every single country that I go into, I try to get someone to give me just a few sentences in like a welcome and a thank you goes so far. And that's something my mom taught me early on. And it's really true. It's that audience thing. It's the first question when you're designing something. What we did earlier when we talked about that bigger screen, smaller screen thing, is knowing what device your audience is using is a big step. You could say, okay, I found this great text on National Geographic Kids. I'm going to copy and paste that on my slide. Done. If they're all on really tiny devices and they have to scroll, it might look great on your machine that you got from school, but they have to go through it. And that's another thing, I think, from design, what I've read about and talked with designers, a lot of things that they learn is when they try it out and ask for feedback, that's where you learn a lot. And I don't think as a teacher, a lot of times we make something and the first time we get feedback is the time we deliver it immediately. And feedback at that time is very personal. People can say what they want. Don't take feedback personal. I put my blood, sweat, and tears in this product, and you said, no, it's not good. And I'm going to take that personal, because that also, for me, at a certain moment, I know it's not the literal words, but it means you don't like me because I did this for you. It's like cooking a meal and saying, here, I made this. And you're like, well, I'm vegetarian. I'm not going to eat that rabbit. There's an Anthony Bourdain quote who says, if you go and visit a culture and this group of people slaughters the only chicken they have for the whole year, I don't care what you are, you show respect, you taste it. Because this is what that family goes through. And that's what I like. Those things resonate with me when I talk about audiences. I need to know those kids that are in my classroom. And I've had a lot of classes, specifically classrooms with almost all boys that were labeled, I was a beginning teacher, so you got those classes. When I got on the playground, out of the 20 kids, 15 were punished and were standing against the wall. So they had no playtime. Then they come back into the classroom and I have to teach them about definitions of words, sentences. That's not going to happen. So I sat down and have a conversation and get the tensions out, because otherwise I can't teach. And I need to know what's going on. So in a professional level, getting to know your kids good enough, well enough. And now that level of parents too. We read a book called, I think it was In the Power of Moments by the Heath brothers. And there's one thing where I think it's actually a school in Washington that they mentioned. they were having trouble saying parents are not showing up at parent-teacher nights, and then they're saying, what are you doing? And they started going in and talking with them and really like, what are you envisioning for your kids' futures? And they're like, well, no one ever asked me that question. So I wasn't part of the community because I didn't really know that you as a teacher cared for my child in that way. So finding those levels, those are just things that even more now I feel where we feel disconnected a little bit, although we're more connected online. That personal touch and those things are a little, I wouldn't say gone, but it's harder. I want to strongly invest in that, those relationships.
I just want to touch on how you,
Sorry, that's
without
a waterfall. I'm gonna drink and shut up.
without realizing it. So when we talked to John Carippo on Wednesday, one of the things we talked about was getting to know your students and not taking the things that you want to do and putting a veneer of interest over it, but really getting to know what interests them, what motivates them, and what drives them. When we talked to Randall Sampson yesterday, he had talked about culture and building culture and how you have to bring everyone into the conversation in order to build that culture of growth and that culture of inclusion and make sure everyone is on the same page with the same values, working toward the same goal. Then you also talked about how essentially bad design can lead to a disability, a situational disability. Yesterday, we talked to Valerie Roski about accessibility and what it means and all the different lenses that accessibility can help and how bad design can actually hinder your ability to access information. You mentioned with the different sizes of fonts or only looking at your lesson and what you've planned and laid out on a big monitor when your kids are working on mobile phones. You could be unintentionally creating this barrier to understanding, and creating this situational disability for them, just by not considering and empathizing with your user. And I don't remember who it was, Mike, maybe you remember. We did talk to somebody about empathy and like how you have to start with, who is your customer, who is your end user, and what is most important to them, what are you trying to communicate to them.
I think it was Valerie too.
Was that Valerie too? Okay. Yeah, you have to, yeah, because she was talking about not everyone has disabilities or experiences disabilities in the same way. So you have to really talk to them about, how do you experience this and get that fast feedback, which is another thing that you mentioned that a couple people have mentioned that we've talked in the last few days. You need that constant iterative. It doesn't have to be a one and done. It's not going to be a checklist where you do it and forget about it. It's something that you're going to constantly go back to and evolve.
But so when I heard you, the first thing I play video games at least 2 or 3 hours a day. That's my break from like sitting in front of the computer, sitting in front of the TV and whatever.
Move to a different screen, but a different experience.
Yeah, and so like
my house in Animal Crossing is getting a basement today. I'm so excited for that.
Okay, so even if we go to Animal Crossing, I've never played Animal Crossing, but the idea that you have choice, I can still play the game. I can play the game in any style that I want. I can build the thing the way I want it to build, and I'm still playing the game, right? It's an open world. I have choices. I can do what I need to. I'm playing, I'm a big Far Cry person.
Identify with and personalize.
Yes. And so I tell this story all the time, and I don't think I've told this story to the webs. So
there's a story you have.
Deus Ex is I've loved both of the games. The first game, there was a particular place where you're this cyborg policeman dude, and you got to go and solve this international mystery because people are getting augmented or whatever. But that's not the point. So I didn't realize I cared about this game until I played. So I beat this board in particular, right? And there's options of how you can beat it. You can beat it in a number of ways. You can fight the guys, you can sneak past them and get them out, whatever. But if you choose to sneak past them, the lady pilot that you have gets killed in the process, right? I must have played that board 75 million times to ensure that my pilot stayed alive because I was heavily invested in, I'm not going to let my friend take a bullet for me, right? So when I think about design, I think about, do you make me care about why I'm doing this as well, right? And do I have choices on how to win? if I don't have choices on how to win, what is the point?
And those are interesting things. Like games influence me a lot. My dad got me my first like console to play with. I came from Atari to Commodores to Segas to Nintendos, stuff, and so on and so on. And a few things that I like about games is that they set goals for me unintentionally. And again, as that badge collector, you want to get to the next level, but you also want to grow your character. If you're playing any sporting games, you want to enhance your skills. If you're playing soccer, you want to be a better forward or a defender. You want to throw the ball better if you're playing NFL, whatever. And those are the goals that are set bit by bit, which brings it back to that from the couch to the 5K. How do you get from sitting at home to running a marathon eventually, maybe even? That's step by step. That's that, let's do this now, and then take it one step further. And celebrating the moments that you have. Like when you earn a reward or you find that secret room in Harry Potter or anything like that, that's a big shout out. Look at the influence that Fortnite has on sporting players and celebrations that we brought in. So gaming world, bringing that together, personalizing it. That's always a part of any of the playgrounds that I design. And what I liked about the first one now is there's always a theme. I love storytelling, and the physical one, because it's so big and you get to see all the tables immediately, people come and jump off and don't take the time to go to the first one where I can introduce the theme. And when you know the story, and that's what games do. I used to play Streets of Rage was one of those games. Yeah. And then the bad guy gets introduced, the good guys get introduced, and there's this conversation going on. But you know what the goal is that you eventually want to do. Forecasting. Now I want to prove that I can do it. And with the virtual playground, this is the first time that I really felt like we got to do an introduction. I got to set the scene. This is kitchen related. That's why we chose these topics. So you can start with the why we're doing this. It keeps coming back to that one.
So now you've hit on what we've been talking about as far as 1% better every day is far better than taking off a big chunk and being overwhelmed. And there's something else you just said. Forecasting. I don't know. I'll think of it. We did have a comment on Facebook. Jenny says, my kids are addicted to Minecraft, but they create some really imaginative, interesting things. I don't mind it so much because they're being creative and are personalizing things to their liking. I shared two links. One was to the Octalysis gamification framework. It's an incredibly thick book that you can get. It's super fascinating. Yukai Cho, who's the author of the book, also has a website and a whole program and all kinds of things, but he gets into elements of gamification beyond like points and badges, and really talks about the things that drive people and motivate people. One of which is, Jenny, customization and personalization. It's something, and if you read the book, you start to see it everywhere. You see it in marketing, you see it in games. Then I also shared the link to Bartle's gamer types. So we talked about being achievers and wanting the badges. There's also the killer archetype, the socializer who likes to have guilds and, have that chat feature and be able to friend people, going back to the Animal Crossing thing. You can live just on your island and never talk to anyone else and be totally happy pulling weeds all day. Or you can be someone who jumps from Friends Island to Friends Island, trading turnips and picking up DIYs and stuff like that. And then what am I missing? Killer, achiever, explorer, where you want to go out and find every little nook and cranny and crevice on the map, and socializer. So I shared that link as well, both on Facebook and in the chat here on Zoom.
So Kurt, I got a question. All right. So this is, given what you just said, given all this stuff, I guess my question is, in order to know your user, you have to be amongst your users, right? Like you have to, like a scientist goes and observes their subjects in their native environment, right? And so there are a lot of teachers who are not gamers, who are not audiophiles, who do not watch YouTube, who not. So there's this like distinct. This is a distinction they make between their users and themselves, right? And so and this is kind of something Valerie talked about yesterday. Now you're making assumptions about a group of people that you know nothing about, right? And so then you have let's sit in. I learned how to use PowerPoint this way, and I sat and typed for 45 minutes a day. So you will learn that too. When I have no idea that, again, Fortnite exists. This kid is an engineer because he's built this Minecraft world, and I've never given him an opportunity or her an opportunity to come into the class. Like, in terms of designing your course, is observing your user important or not?
I think you need to understand your audience in a way. If you want to, I'm seeing this graphic in front of me where it's on Instagram. There's an account that I follow. It's logo designers, and there's like what the customer says, and then what it really needs to be. And if you want to get everyone's opinion in, then you're creating a monster. So you need to know your audience, and then know what have they all got in common. And then for the parts that they don't have in common, that's where you give them the freedom to express themselves and their personality, and where they give a moment where they can build in surprise and delight. And you'll be like, whoa, I didn't expect that from this kid. So, and you kind of make them feel that I know you have the talent. I'm being the guide. I'm not the hero. And that's what you learn from storytelling again, is that as a teacher, you want to be the Yoda. You don't need to know the Star Wars movies. And I'm going to say something very controversial. I'm not a big fan of Star Wars.
We're here to offend people. We're here to offend people. So that's totally cool.
But I love the hero and the villain kind of thing. I'll even admit I've only seen 2 of the 3 original Star Wars.
The original ones.
Facebook's probably going to blow up now. But we're in COVID and it's the weekend, so I can catch up if you're all angry at me.
Oh, that's classic.
But I've seen all the Marvel movies, so everyone their own. But
I think the talk of the ADE community. Did you hear Kurt hasn't seen all the Star Wars movies?
No. That's like, oh, he's not a real educator. I shed the imposter syndrome off of me right now. So yeah, like looking at yourself as you're the guide, and I think brings me back to a teacher that kind of made me want to become a teacher and really showed me the power that you can have as an educator. It was my English teacher. And he did it twice for me. I'm a student of what we call in Belgium the waterfall model. So you take a test, you either score good on the test or not, and then they put you in the top or anywhere down below. I scored really good at that one. So they said you have to go study Latin and mathematics. And I like neither one of those. I really love drawing. I spent a lot of time in that. I really like English, but I couldn't care less about Dutch. So I started to struggle, and then they said, oh, you didn't perform well in middle school, so we're going to send you all the way down now based upon your test results. But all the way down didn't mean, like, I wasn't really good with my hands. So now you're going to send me to an auto shop. That's not going to work for me. And I didn't have any interest in that either. I do believe that that's necessary because my dad eventually became a car mechanic and that passion was installed. But I wanted to do something different. And then that teacher came to my house and talked with my parents, and he said, I believe in you. And I think that with these and these steps, and he laid out a path for me. Like to cross a river, you do it pebble by pebble, yeah? So he did that for me once there, and he did it again in my last year, where I was struggling. Whenever I had to read books, I'm a comic book lover. So I said, a book needs to have text, yeah? It's like, all right, this got text, buddy. There's more images in it, but look what's in those text balloons. So I'm reading that. And I'm reading the same book over and over and swapping summaries of books with other like classmates. until he saw that I was really interested in sports, and he gave me a book, and I devoured that book. And then I found another one in that topic. He also crushed my spirit a little bit then, and that to what Mike said earlier is that he then mentioned to me saying, I don't want you to read the same kind of book over and over. I want you to widen your experience a little bit. And at that time, I wasn't ready for it. So it crushed my reading at that time, because I wanted to be in the driver's seat of, hey, you finally got me warmed up and hungry for reading. And now you're telling me I have to go read the other boring books again. That makes me go back to the library and pick the thinnest book and the minimum to pass the test. And
I feel like every teacher listening right now knows exactly what you're like. They're thinking of a student that is that student.
I am that student in the back of the classroom trying to figure out, what do I have to do? I think that helped me into becoming an educator, because I can think like my audience and the ones that got punished. So I had a lot of experience where I had to go be a substitute for teachers, specifically one I remember. By December, and a school year starts for us in September too, her voice was gone from yelling to the kids. So she was out. And I'm kind of that, I know what happens in the back of the classroom. So I know that also the smart kids sometimes set things up so that they put them intentionally in a bad daylight, but it's the smart kid who actually got this kid in the back to like fumble for it. So I didn't take that approach, and that got appreciated by the whole class and changed the dynamic. And I never had to shout. But those are just valuable lessons that I had from teacher guides along the way, who said, your children are the heroes in the classroom, and you're lucky to be part of their path for 1 year or maybe longer.
That's really
just my way of looking at things. It's not a general, I'm not preaching. It's just what works for me.
But that's like, so Tom Vogley, if you're not watching Mr. Vogley, you know, he just retired, my history teacher from high school. And as you were saying that, I was thinking of two teachers in particular. All right, so kind of in the design and kind of sometimes you have to, so Nisha says, sometimes you have to injure your pupil in order for them to be able to be healed later on and understand that wound made your skin a little bit tougher, right?
Yeah.
So my first 2 years of high school, I was in DC proper, right? So had the same history teacher those 2 years, Jesse Nicholson. Shout out to Mr. Nichols. He's also my Facebook friend. Shout out to him. But he let me kind of, when we wrote essays, I was more of a jazz musician, right? I could interpolate stuff. I'm like taking, rap lyrics and throwing them in to apply to Napoleonic Wars and stuff like that. And he was real cool. It was like early blogging on notebook paper. Really, really, it was like, all right, cool. This guy's let me do what I do. When I transferred high schools, Mr. Vogley, I think a lot of times when kids have to understand, we don't see the big picture of things, especially being an African-American kid and not knowing what other challenges I would be facing in the academic world. What Vogley did for me was, because of his wisdom, he injured me, and he damaged my pride my junior year of high school, because I wrote my first essay for him like I wrote for Mr. Nichols, and he was like, nope, this is not how we do this. We're writing academic essays. This is what an academic essay looks like. This is what you will do. And it pissed me off. Like, I'm like, all right, dude, this was good enough for this dude, right? And he was giving me A+ and stuff. And now this other dude says, no, that's not what the deal is. And so he went down and kind of intentionally built me back up, though. He was a military guy. He was like, let me smash your dream and let me build you back up, so now you know what you need to do. And so by the time I graduated from high school, right, I started my college career as a sophomore. Like, my entire freshman year just about was done in my high school. And writing papers was never a big thing for me, because I had this dude who showed me how to do that. And he did it in this very story, like the way he talked about history, like it was like you were sitting there on the front lines and like you could smell the gun smoke. You could, like, you were in the mud was on you. Dude,
He just
He
needed help.
He was off the chain. And like, as you were talking, I was like, well, he was my Yoda type person. He was kind of the, this is what you're going to do. Yeah. And he is one of the big contributors to why teaching was even an option for me. Like, I had no idea about, and I thought about the teachers that I had and how they intentionally, there was nothing haphazard about how he taught. This was the path. This is the path I've walked before. I can get you to where you need to go. And I think that is my problem right now, looking at distance learning in quotation marks. And that this is not intentionally designed. These are people throwing things, again, let's build the plane as we're flying it. Well, people die then. Like, that's a direct consequence of trying to fly and build. People are going to fall off the plane.
Take that thing, that synchronous learning model, and cram it into something that just doesn't fit synchronous learning.
Facts. And I think that is the issue. That's why I think that there needs to be more, there needs to be a step back, right? A step back that says, what are we trying to accomplish here? It's not like education, like brick and mortar education was working, because it wasn't. Like, it wasn't working. So why are you trying to force that model into a place where it could be an open world game?
Yeah, I do think that to their defense, because I'm trying to understand all sides of the story and do the 360, is that if that's the only thing you know, then it's easy to try to do that and try it out and then figure out, is this working or not? Or can I make it work for me? And part of design is, here's the prototype and get it out and try it. Also part of design is looking back at it and reflecting and taking feedback and saying, these were good things and these things don't work. But so how are we going to improve from that? So
if we're making hamburgers, I totally agree with you, right? If I'm making a hamburger or a PDF, I'm like, yes, let's go. But we're talking about human beings' ability to make money, be successful, to overcome racial prejudice, gender bias, sexual orientation issues. Like, you have, like, if you hamstring a kid when they're in first grade, second grade, third grade, you have damned them to a life where perhaps they're not going to be successful, right?
And that's, I taught at university in evening classes on weekends for people who wanted to become teachers after the age of 21. So they came from different professions, and talking about shattering pride and all of that, there's been hard conversations that I had to have with teachers who I said, you want to be the teacher that you had when you were in elementary school. Total different world. For some, that was 30, 40 years ago. That's not education anymore. Take the good things from that teacher and the loving and the kindness that they had and the caring for you, but the way of teaching where if you walked the class and everyone followed you because you were the most important thing in the classroom, that's gone. You could be the light that pops up. Right? You need to show them that way, and you need to, and that again brings it back to storytelling, which for me is related to the design. Is if you're the guide, they're the hero, you talk with them and you lay out a path, then you do your call to action. And then it could go either way, yeah? You can call them to action and they can say, all right, you've inspired me, I'm going to do it immediately. Or they can say, oh, we'll see what happens. It was just a lot of BS and we'll see later on. And then I'll wait till the final moment and I'll publish something. And they still do it. They still get that moment where it could go either way.
Absolutely.
What do they learn from that? Where do you come in as a guide?
So we have 2 comments on Facebook, and also, unfortunately, we're out of time. But Tori on Facebook says, shout out to Banneker. And Jenny says, exactly. I have friends who are wanting to pull their kids out and homeschool them. I can't say that I blame them. Our school had 700 kids at the end of last year. Currently, we only have 400 enrolled.
Yeah.
The world is changing. Yep.
Parents who approached me for micro schools and making packages so that they could learn. So I think I've also spoken to teachers who said, if this is the only way of teaching, I will step out of the profession.
Yep.
Yeah. I've had students who say that I can't learn this way, so I will just not show up. I don't know what you're going to do about that, but I won't show up. So change, it's easy to say that it has to come and it will come. I think the only certainty is that things are changing. How can we help with that? Our teachers are going to go become private consultants for micro schools. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it'll be interesting. I think, again, this is a watershed moment for education, whether it's going to be a positive watershed or it's going to be a negative one, who knows? I think I definitely agree wholeheartedly with what you just said, that they're going to have, I think people are looking at the micro schools as, oh, this is going to create more inequity in the system. Well, I'm like, perhaps there are going to be opportunities for parents, for minority communities to create their own micro schools and say, these are the things that are important for us. We're going to go and we're going to assess teachers and say, this person knows how to reach my kid and make things relevant for us. I have a lot more control in the process, given that our neighborhood schools suck. And if I had a child and if I lived in the community that I teach in, no way my kid would go to that school if I had a choice. Yeah. There's just the ability to innovate, given that you're in this large monolithic organization, is limited. They're telling us stuff that, just commonsensically, you're like, that doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm. And on that note,
Kurt, we got to do this again, man. We got to now. I'm all like,
it goes so fast.
I'm all hyped up and stuff now. Kurt Klein, man, appreciate it, man. Appreciate it.
Same. Thanks for the opportunity again. It's always good talking with you guys.
Indeed. So about 5-minute break, and then we'll be back on with Elizabeth Wisnia and Jeff Bello from the California Department of Education, talking about digital privacy.
Indeed. Kurt.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
See you later.
Bye.